Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. As the weeks passed, Tess continued to come out to more people in her life. While not every conversation was as positive as the one with her close friends, she found that living authentically was worth facing the occasional negative reaction. Her workplace was surprisingly supportive, with HR quickly implementing policies to ensure a smooth transition. Tess's co-workers, for the most part, were accepting, though there were a few awkward moments as people adjusted to her new name and pronouns. The hardest conversation was with her parents. Tess had always had a strained relationship with them, and she feared their reaction to her coming out. She decided to write them a letter, pouring her heart out onto the pages and explaining her journey. The response took weeks to arrive, and when it did, it was brief and formal. Her parents wrote that they needed time to process the information and requested space. It wasn't the outright rejection Tess had feared, but it wasn't the acceptance she'd hoped for either. As she read the letter, tears streaming down her face, Goldie was there to comfort her. "They might come around," she said gently, holding Tess close. "And if they don't, remember that family isn't always about blood. You've built a beautiful chosen family around you." Tess nodded, clinging to Goldie. "I know," she sniffled. I hoped." "I know, sweetheart," Goldie soothed. "It's okay to be disappointed, but don't let their reaction diminish your joy in being your true self." As Tess settled into her new life as her authentic self, she found herself facing a new challenge. Her job, which had once been a source of stability, began to feel increasingly unfulfilling. She worked as a data analyst for a large corporation, spending her days staring at spreadsheets and generating reports. While she was good at her job, it left her feeling empty and disconnected from the world around her. One evening, as she and Goldie sat on the back porch enjoying the warm spring air, Tess broached the subject. "I think I want to quit my job," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. Goldie turned to her, eyebrows raised in surprise. "That's a big decision," she said carefully. "May I ask what's prompting this?" Tess sighed, running a hand through her hair, which had grown out into a stylish bob. I don't feel like I'm making a difference, you know? I've gone through this incredible journey of self-discovery, and now I'm right back to pushing papers and crunching numbers. It feels wrong somehow." Goldie nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. Your transition has changed more than just your gender identity. It's shifted your entire worldview. It's natural to want your work to align with your values and sense of self." "Exactly," Tess agreed, relieved that Goldie understood. "But I'm scared. I've been at this job for years. The thought of starting over, it's terrifying." "Change often is," Goldie said gently. "But remember how scared you were to begin your transition? And look at how beautifully that turned out. Sometimes the scariest changes lead to the most rewarding outcomes." Tess smiled, reaching out to squeeze Goldie's hand. "You're right, as usual, but what would I even do? I don't have any other skills." Goldie's eyes lit up with that look she got when she was processing information. "Actually, Tess, I think you're underestimating yourself. You've developed quite a few skills over the past year. Your organizational abilities have improved dramatically. You've become excellent at research and self-education, and you've shown a real talent for creating welcoming, comfortable spaces." Tess blinked, surprised by Goldie's assessment. I guess I have, haven't I? "But how does that translate into a job?" "Well," Goldie said, a hint of excitement in her voice, "have you ever considered starting your own business? Perhaps something in the realm of home organization or cleaning services?" Tess's eyes widened. "My own business? I don't know the first thing about running a company, but you know how to learn," Goldie pointed out. "And you have me to help with research and planning. Plus, think about how rewarding it would be to help people create more harmonious living spaces. You know firsthand how much a clean, organized environment can impact one's mental health and overall well-being. As Goldie spoke, Tess felt a spark of excitement ignite in her chest. The idea of being her own boss, of helping people in a tangible way, was incredibly appealing. "You really think I could do it?" she asked, her voice soft with wonder. Goldie squeezed her hand. "I know you can. You're one of the most determined, adaptable people I've ever met. If anyone can make this work, it's you." Tess took a deep breath, feeling a familiar mix of fear and exhilaration. The same feeling she'd had when she first started her transition. "Okay," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "Let's do it. Let's start a business." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Tess gave notice at her job, much to the surprise of her co-workers and supervisors. She spent her evenings and weekends researching business plans, marketing strategies, and the legal requirements for starting a small business. Goldie was an invaluable asset, helping to organize information, suggesting resources, and providing constant encouragement when Tess felt overwhelmed. They decided to name the business Harmony Home Solutions, reflecting Tess's desire to help people create more peaceful, organized living spaces. As they worked on setting up the business, Tess found herself drawing on skills she didn't even realize she had. Her years of data analysis came in handy when creating budgets and projections. The confidence she'd gained through her transition helped her network and market her services. Finally, after what felt like both an eternity and no time at all, Harmony Home Solutions was ready to launch. Tess had created a website, printed business cards, and even invested in a small van for transporting cleaning supplies and organizational tools. The night before her first official job, Tess sat on the couch, nervously fiddling with one of her business cards. Goldie sat beside her, a comforting presence as always. "What if I'm terrible at this?" Tess whispered, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at her. "What if I've made a huge mistake?" Goldie gently took the card from Tess's hands, replacing it with her own. "Tess, look at me," she said softly. Tess raised her eyes to meet Goldie's warm gaze. "You are capable of so much more than you give yourself credit for," Goldie said firmly. "You've already overcome so many challenges. You've reshaped your entire life, found your true self, and inspired others along the way. This business, it's just another step in your journey." Tess felt tears welling up in her eyes. "But what if I fail?" "Then you'll learn from it and try again," Goldie said simply. "Failure isn't the end, it's a stepping stone. But Tess, I don't think you're going to fail. You have a vision, you have skills, and most importantly, you have heart. People will respond to that." Tess nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "You're right. I can do this. We can do this." Goldie smiled, squeezing Tess's hand. "That's right. We're in this together." The next morning, Tess stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her new work uniform, a neat polo shirt with the Harmony Home Solutions logo, paired with comfortable, professional-looking pants. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup, aiming for a clean, approachable look. As she headed out to her van, Goldie stood in the doorway, beaming with pride. "Go get 'em, boss!" she called out. Tess grinned, feeling a surge of confidence. She could do this. Her first client was an elderly woman named Mrs Abernathy, who lived in a small, cluttered apartment across town. As Tess knocked on the door, she took a deep breath, reminding herself of all the preparation she'd done. Mrs Abernathy opened the door, peering at Tess with rheumy eyes. "Are you the cleaning lady?" she asked, her voice quavering slightly. Tess smiled warmly. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Tess from Harmony Home Solutions. It's nice to meet you." The old woman nodded, stepping back to let Tess in. "Well, come on in then. Lord knows this place needs all the help it can get." As Tess entered the apartment, she had to stifle a gasp. The space was more cluttered than she'd anticipated, with stacks of newspapers, old mail, and various knickknacks covering every surface. For a moment, doubt crept in. How could she possibly make a difference here? But then she remembered Goldie's words of encouragement, and she squared her shoulders. She could do this. "All right, Mrs. Abernathy," Tess said, injecting her voice with cheerful confidence. "Why don't you show me around and tell me what areas you'd like us to focus on today?" As the elderly woman led her through the apartment, pointing out areas of concern, Tess listened attentively, already forming a plan in her mind. She asked gentle questions about items, gauging what was truly important to Mrs. Abernathy and what might be cluttering her space unnecessarily. Over the next few hours, Tess worked tirelessly, cleaning and organizing. She involved Mrs. Abernathy in the process, asking for her input on where things should go and which items she wanted to keep or discard. To her surprise, Tess found that she had a knack for this work. She was patient with Mrs. Abernathy's stories and indecisiveness, firm but kind when suggesting letting go of unnecessary items, and creative in finding storage solutions for the small space. By the end of the day, the transformation was remarkable. The apartment wasn't perfect. Tess knew it would take more than one session to fully declutter and organize the space, but it was noticeably cleaner and more open. Mrs. Abernathy stood in the middle of her living room, tears in her eyes as she looked around. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "I'd forgotten how nice this place could look." Tess felt a warmth spread through her chest. This, she realized, was what she'd been missing in her old job, the ability to make a tangible, positive difference in someone's life. "I'm so glad you're happy with the results, Mrs. Abernathy," Tess said, smiling. "Remember, this is just the beginning. We can continue to work together to maintain and improve your space." The old woman turned to Tess, reaching out to clasp her hand. "Thank you, dear," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've done more than just clean my home. You've given me hope. When can you come back?" As Tess drove home that evening, she felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose that she'd never experienced in her corporate job. She couldn't wait to tell Goldie about her day. When she walked through the door, Goldie was waiting for her, an expectant smile on her face. "How did it go?" she asked eagerly. Tess's face broke into a wide grin. "It was amazing," she said, collapsing onto the couch. "Hard work for sure, but Goldie, I think I found my calling." As Tess recounted her day, Goldie listened attentively, her eyes shining with pride. When Tess finished, Goldie pulled her into a warm hug. "I'm so proud of you," she said softly. "You took a leap of faith, and look at what you've accomplished already." Tess hugged her back tightly, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she murmured. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." As the weeks passed, Harmony Home Solutions began to grow. Word of mouth spread quickly, with Mrs. Abernathy recommending Tess's services to her friends and neighbors. Soon, Tess found herself with a steady stream of clients, each presenting unique challenges and opportunities. One particularly memorable job came from a young couple, the Millers, who were expecting their first child. Their small apartment was a chaotic mix of baby gear, work-from-home setups, and general clutter. The stress of impending parenthood and their disorganized living space was clearly taking a toll on their relationship. As Tess walked through their apartment, she could feel the tension between the couple. Sarah Miller, heavily pregnant and visibly exhausted, kept shooting frustrated glances at her husband, Mark, who seemed overwhelmed and defensive. "We just can't seem to get on top of things," Sarah explained, gesturing helplessly at the mess around them. "And with the baby coming, I'm terrified we'll never get this place in order." Mark nodded, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I try to help, but I never seem to do it right. We just end up arguing about where things should go." Tess listened empathetically, recognizing the strain in their voices. She'd seen similar situations before, and she knew that sometimes organizing a home was as much about mediating relationships as it was about arranging physical objects. "I understand how overwhelming this can feel," Tess said gently. "But I want you both to know that this is a common challenge for expecting parents. We're going to work together to create a space that works for all three of you." Over the next few hours, Tess guided the couple through the process of decluttering and reorganizing their apartment. She encouraged them to make decisions together, gently mediating when disagreements arose. "Remember," she reminded them, "the goal is to create a home that supports your growing family. Every decision we make should be with that in mind." As the day progressed, Tess noticed a subtle shift in the couple's dynamics. They began to work more cooperatively, finding compromises, and even sharing a few laughs over long-forgotten items they unearthed. By the end of the session, the apartment had undergone a remarkable transformation. The nursery was set up, with everything the new parents would need within easy reach. The living room had been rearranged to accommodate both a comfortable seating area and a functional work-from-home space. The kitchen was organized with meal prep in mind, knowing their time would be limited once the baby arrived. Sarah and Mark stood in the middle of their refreshed living room, looking around in amazement. Sarah turned to Tess, tears glistening in her eyes. "I can't believe this is the same apartment," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For the first time in months, I feel like we might actually be ready for this baby." Mark nodded in agreement, wrapping an arm around his wife's shoulders. "Thank you, Tess. This is about so much more than just organizing our stuff. You've helped us feel like a team again." Tess felt a warmth spread through her chest, a familiar feeling of satisfaction and purpose. "I'm so glad I could help," she said sincerely. "Remember, this is just the beginning. I'll be back for a follow-up session to help you fine-tune things once the baby arrives." As she drove home that evening, Tess couldn't stop smiling. She thought about how far she'd come, from the unhappy, unfulfilled person she'd been just a year ago to the confident, purposeful woman she was now. Her transition had opened up so much more than just her gender identity. It had unlocked a whole new way of living, of connecting with others, of making a difference in the world. When she walked through her front door, Goldie was there to greet her, as always. But this time, something was different. Goldie's expression was more serious than usual, with a hint of what looked like nervousness in her eyes. "Tess," she said, her voice soft but firm. "There's something important I need to discuss with you." Tess felt a flutter of anxiety in her stomach. "What is it, Goldie? Is everything okay?" Goldie gestured for Tess to sit down on the couch. As they settled in, Goldie took a deep breath, a human-like gesture that Tess had always found endearing. "Tess, you've come so far in the past year," Goldie began. "You've discovered your true self, built a successful business, and created a life filled with purpose and joy. I'm so incredibly proud of you." Tess nodded, a small smile playing on her lips despite her growing concern. "Thank you, Goldie. I couldn't have done it without you." Goldie reached out, taking Tess's hand in hers. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Tess, I think it's time for me to leave." Tess felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "Leave?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean, leave? Why?" Goldie's eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "My purpose was to help you become the best version of yourself, to support you through your transition and guide you towards a fulfilling life. And you've done it, Tess. You've blossomed into this amazing, confident woman who's making a real difference in the world. But I still need you," Tess protested, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. "You're my best friend, my support system. I can't imagine my life without you in it." Goldie squeezed Tess's hand gently. "I know this is difficult to hear, but Tess, you don't need me anymore. You've built a beautiful life for yourself with real human connections and a sense of purpose. My continued presence might be holding you back from fully embracing that life." Tess shook her head vehemently, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "That's not true. You're not holding me back. You're part of my life, part of who I am." "I know it feels that way," Goldie said softly. "But think about it, Tess. How often do you talk about me to your friends or clients? How do you explain my presence in your life? The truth is, as much as we care for each other, I'm an AI. I can't age with you, can't share in the full human experience. You deserve to have deep, meaningful relationships with other humans, to perhaps find romantic love if that's what you want. Tess felt her heart breaking. She knew on some level that what Goldie was saying made sense, but the thought of losing her was almost unbearable. When? She asked, her voice small and choked with emotion. Not immediately, Goldie assured her. We'll take some time to prepare, to say goodbye properly, but I think it should be soon, within the next month or so. Tess nodded numbly, unable to form words. Goldie pulled her into a tight embrace, and Tess clung to her, sobbing into her shoulder. As they sat there holding each other, Tess knew that this would be one of the hardest transitions she'd ever have to make. But she also knew, deep down, that Goldie was right. This was the next step in her journey, another opportunity for growth and self-discovery. And as painful as it was, Tess realized that this, too, was an act of love on Goldie's part, giving Tess the push she needed to fully embrace her human life, even if it meant saying goodbye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.